Fox girl classmate keeps waiting for me after every lecture. She sought refuge not in an impenetrable fortress, but in the gentle, steady rhythm of a human's daily routine, a vulnerability she dared not show anyone else. Caspian exited the lecture hall with the precision of a chronometer. His academic life on Viridia demanded such exactitude, every class, every research session, every meal meticulously scheduled. He adjusted the strap of his data satchel, his mind already cataloging the finer points of stellar cartography from the morning's lecture. As he navigated the bustling corridor, his gaze, sharp and analytical, swept over the faces leaving the hall. It was then he saw her again. Eloan, the fox woman, stood near the exit archway, her vibrant presence a stark contrast to the muted tones of the Viridian stone. Her fur, a rich blend of auburn and russet, tipped with bright orange at the ears and tail, caught the ambient light. Her striking red hair, swept back from her intelligent eyes, framed a face that held both an ancient wisdom and a youthful curiosity. As he approached, she subtly adjusted the worn leather jacket slung over her shoulder, a habit he had unconsciously registered. Her eyes, a piercing amber, met his for a fraction of a second, and a warm, fleeting smile touched her lips before she looked away. Caspian acknowledged her with a curt, almost imperceptible nod, a gesture born more of habit than conscious recognition. He had seen her here before, many times, always near this specific exit, always around the same time he left his morning lecture. He had initially dismissed it as a mere coincidence, a natural overlap in campus schedules. Viridia University housed a diverse population, drawn from myriad worlds across the sector. A Vulpine student attending a class nearby was hardly unusual. Yet as the weeks progressed, the coincidence began to fray at the edges of his logical processing. Monday, Wednesday, Friday mornings, stellar cartography. He would pack his notes, rise from his seat, and exit the hall. Eloan would be there, not always in the exact same spot, but always within his line of sight as he emerged, a silent sentinel by the archway. Her presence became a subtle, unstated fixture of his routine, as predictable as the chime of the university clock tower. One crisp Tuesday afternoon, after an advanced quantum physics seminar, Caspian found himself contemplating a complex theorem as he walked toward the main plaza. He usually took the direct route, but today, lost in thought, he veered slightly, cutting through a less frequented path past the ancient Viridian oaks. To his mild surprise, as he rounded a bend in the path, there she was again. Eloan. She was examining a holographic campus map, her tail a soft brush against her leg. She glanced up, her amber eyes finding his across the short distance. Another warm, almost shy smile. She adjusted her jacket again, a nervous energy beneath the casual gesture. He returned the smile, a little more consciously this time. He wondered if he was simply becoming more aware of her, or perhaps she had a class in this particular building too. He mentally reviewed the university catalog. No, the advanced quantum physics lectures were held exclusively in the Science Spire. Her general studies building was across campus. He filed the anomaly away, a small data point demanding further observation. The next morning, after his stellar cartography lecture, Caspian deliberately lingered for a moment, organizing his notes with an unusual slowness. He watched as the last few students trickled out. Then he stepped into the corridor. Eloan was already there, leaning against the archway, seemingly absorbed in a datapad. Her posture was relaxed, yet her attention seemed to sharpen the moment he appeared. Her head lifted and her gaze found his again. The fleeting, familiar smile. This was no longer coincidence. His logical mind, trained to identify patterns in cosmic data, could not ignore this emerging trend. Her timing was impeccably aligned with his departure, almost preternaturally so. He began to replay their previous encounters, each memory now imbued with a new significance. The way she subtly shifted her weight as he passed, the almost imperceptible tilt of her head, the precise moment her eyes met his. It was a silent ballet, a routine choreographed with an unseen hand. He walked past her, acknowledging her with a slightly more pronounced nod this time. He felt a curious blend of intrigue and a faint, almost imperceptible flutter of something akin to warmth. He wondered what her purpose was. Was she waiting for someone else, and he merely happened to be a part of her waiting backdrop? Unlikely. Her gaze was always directed towards the exit he used. Her smile was always for him. Caspian spent the afternoon in the university archives, researching ancient Viridian astronomical charts. His usual laser focus wavered. Images of Aloan kept interjecting into his thoughts. The bright orange tips of her fur, the striking red hair, the way her leather jacket moved with her subtle adjustments. He found himself analyzing her behavior with the same rigor he applied to celestial mechanics. He considered the possibilities. Was she a fellow student, perhaps interested in collaboration? Unlikely. She had never approached him directly. Was it a cultural custom he was unfamiliar with? Vulpine's social cues could be intricate, but this seemed too personal, too consistent for a general custom. Was she simply a friendly face? Her warmth was undeniable, but the persistence suggested more. The unspoken regularity of her presence became a puzzle he could not dismiss. He was a creature of habit, and now, it seemed, so was she, but her habits revolved around his. He found himself anticipating her presence before he even left the lecture hall. A quiet expectation began to form, a subtle anticipation of that brief, warm smile. He decided to test his hypothesis. The next day, after his stellar cartography class, he chose an entirely different exit, one leading to the campus's rarely used service tunnels. He walked briskly, his senses alert. He emerged near the administration building, a considerable distance from his usual path. He looked around. No Aloan. A strange, unexpected twinge of something akin to disappointment stirred within him. He immediately suppressed it. This simply proved she was not omniscient. It did not disprove the pattern, merely demonstrated its parameters. She likely anticipated his usual movements. Later that week, he returned to his standard exit strategy. He walked out, his expression neutral. There she was, leaning against the archway, seemingly reading a datapad, but her head lifted precisely as he stepped into the corridor. The familiar, warm smile bloomed on her face, a fleeting moment of pure, unadulterated sincerity. She adjusted her leather jacket, her tail giving a small, almost imperceptible twitch. Caspian felt a jolt of certainty. This was a deliberate pattern meticulously executed. It defied random chance entirely. Her presence was not a coincidence. It was an intentional act. The implications of this realization settled over him, a quiet weight. What did she want? Why him? The questions buzzed in his mind, replacing stellar cartography and quantum physics with a far more immediate and intriguing enigma. He nodded at her again, a little more slowly this time, his gaze lingering for a fraction longer. He saw the warmth in her eyes, the gentle curve of her smile, and for the first time he considered the possibility that her constant, silent vigil was not merely an observation, but a form of unspoken communication, a quiet anchor in the bustling uncertainty of Viridian university life. A vulnerability, perhaps. He walked away, his stride still precise, but his mind now far from the stars, caught instead in the orbit of a fox woman and her undeniable, deliberate presence. He knew with absolute certainty that she was waiting for him. One afternoon, Caspian found himself at the campus fountain, the rhythmic splash of water a familiar backdrop to his thoughts. He adjusted his datapad, preparing for his next class in advanced astrogation. Across the shimmering surface, Aloan sat on the edge of the fountain's basin, her orange fur tips catching the reflected light. She wasn't looking at him directly, but her posture, the subtle tilt of her head, suggested an awareness of his presence. She idly traced patterns on the damp stone with a delicate claw, a picture of quiet contemplation. He watched her for a moment, a new layer of observation coloring his perception. Her earlier appearances had been at specific points, always as he moved. Now she was simply there, seemingly waiting. It was a slight deviation from the pattern, yet it reinforced the central truth. Her schedule, whatever its true purpose, consistently overlapped with his. The thought was both unsettling and strangely grounding. He pushed a stray strand of dark hair from his eyes, his mind already formulating a new test. His next class was in the bioengineering wing, a building usually accessed by the main thoroughfare. Today, he would take a different route. He decided on the Arboretum path, a winding, less frequented stretch of cultivated greenery that offered a longer, more circuitous journey. It would add 10 minutes to his walk, but the data it could provide felt essential. Caspian rose, gathering his notes with practiced efficiency. He did not look at Alowan directly, maintaining his usual detached academic demeanor. He turned towards the Arboretum entrance, a verdant archway leading into a quieter section of campus. The air immediately grew cooler, carrying the scent of exotic flora from a dozen different worlds. He walked with a steady, unhurried pace, his ears tuned to the rustle of leaves, his eyes scanning the path ahead. He allowed his thoughts to drift, considering the implications of his current experiment. If she appeared here, it would elevate her attentiveness from predictable pattern recognition to something far more intricate, something that required anticipation, perhaps even a knowledge of his unspoken habits. He passed a thicket of luminiferns, their broad leaves glowing faintly. The path curved sharply around a cluster of sky reeds, their tall stalks swaying gently. The arboretum was sparsely populated at this hour, offering a sense of isolated calm. He continued, his internal clock ticking down the minutes until his class. A part of him expected nothing, a small relief perhaps, validating his initial dismissal of her as merely coincidental. Another part, the one now deeply intrigued, anticipated a confirmation of his growing certainty. As he rounded a particularly dense grove of crimson-barked saplings, a flash of orange and the distinct silhouette of a leather jacket registered in his peripheral vision. Alowan. She stood near a bubbling brook that fed into a small pond, seemingly admiring the iridescent water skimmers. She wasn't facing him, but her head turned with an almost imperceptible grace as he drew closer. Her tail, a luxurious plume of orange and red, gave a soft, almost shy twitch. Caspian stopped, his stride breaking for the first time since entering the arboretum. His breath hitched, a small, involuntary reaction. She had appeared again. Not at his usual lecture exit, not at his planned fountain spot, but here on a path he had chosen on a whim, a path he rarely took. The casualness of her presence, the way she appeared utterly absorbed in the tiny aquatic insects, was a masterful deception, if indeed it was one. Her timing was impeccable, her placement flawless. He swallowed, his academic brain struggling to compute this new data point. This was beyond coincidence. It defied any statistical probability he could conceive. He had altered his routine dramatically, chosen a path through a less frequented area, and yet there she was, maintaining that same respectful, silent distance. She made no move toward him, offered no direct greeting beyond the subtle shift in her attention. Her warm smile, however, still bloomed, a gentle invitation in her striking face. "Good afternoon," Caspian said, the words feeling foreign and slightly clumsy on his tongue. It was the first time he had initiated contact beyond a simple nod. Alowan's ears perked slightly, her smile widening just a fraction. "Caspian," she replied, her voice soft, melodious, and carrying a hint of a unique accent. She did not elaborate, did not ask why he was on this path, or acknowledge the improbable nature of their meeting. She simply offered his name, like a small, warm gift. He felt a curious jolt at the sound of his name on her lips. It was unexpected. "I am heading to bioengineering," he stated, feeling a need to explain his presence, even though she had clearly anticipated it. "A fascinating field," Alowan said, turning fully to face him now. Her amber eyes held a depth he hadn't noticed before, a quiet intelligence. "The study of life's intricate designs." Caspian found himself nodding, drawn into the brief exchange. Indeed, the convergence of biology and technology holds immense potential. He paused, a question forming on his lips, but he held it back. He wanted to ask how she knew, how she always appeared, but the words felt too abrupt, too direct for the delicate balance they seemed to have established. Alowan simply offered another gentle smile, then turned, beginning to walk ahead of him, along the same path he needed to take. She maintained a comfortable distance, neither too close nor too far, a silent, graceful guide. It was as if she had always known his destination, his route, and had simply been waiting for him to join her. The realization settled over Caspian with the weight of absolute certainty. It wasn't just a pattern of appearances, it was a meticulously aligned schedule. Her entire campus routine, he now understood, was calibrated around his own. She wasn't just observing him, she was accompanying him. Every lecture, every library visit, every coffee break, she was there, a silent daily escort. The thought was staggering in its implications. His initial unease, a prickle of being watched, began to morph. It was still there, a faint undercurrent, but it was now interwoven with something else, something softer, warmer. A strange sense of companionship bloomed within him. She wasn't a stalker, she was a presence. A deliberate, consistent, and oddly reassuring presence. He acknowledged her deliberate actions now, not with suspicion, but with a growing, profound curiosity. What could compel someone to dedicate so much of their time to such a silent, consistent vigil? What did she seek? What was the unspoken communication she was attempting to convey? He looked at her back as she walked, her vibrant tail swaying with a rhythmic grace. Her presence felt less like an intrusion and more like a quiet anchor, a steady point in the often chaotic flow of academic life. He sped up his pace slightly, matching her stride. They walked together, side by side, yet still maintaining a careful, unspoken space. The silence between them was not awkward, but comfortable, filled with the rustle of leaves and the distant sounds of campus. He felt a novel sense of warmth, an unexpected connection to this Fox woman whose presence had become an undeniable, integral part of his days. Her actions, once a perplexing anomaly, now felt like a quiet, steadfast devotion, a vulnerability she extended only to him. He knew, with a certainty that resonated deep within him, that his world, once neatly compartmentalized by study and routine, was about to expand. A sudden, fierce downpour erupted, lashing against the Viridia University campus with unexpected violence. Students scattered, seeking shelter, their laughter and chatter replaced by the drumming of rain. Caspian, caught near the campus cafe, instinctively reached for his datapad not to shield himself, but to extend it over Aloan. She had been walking beside him, her head slightly tilted, her vibrant fur now speckled with droplets. Aloan paused, her movements fluid and unhurried even as the rain intensified. She looked at the extended datapad, then up at Caspian. Her fur, damp and clinging, framed a face that held a newfound softness. Her gaze, usually guarded, was direct, warm, and undeniably vulnerable. A slow, genuine smile bloomed on her lips, a stark contrast to the fleeting, almost accidental smiles he had previously observed. "I feel uniquely safe when I am near you," Aloan said, her voice a low, resonant murmur barely audible over the rain. The words, so simple yet so profound, startled Caspian. They hung in the air between them, heavier than the rainfall itself. He lowered the datapad slightly, his eyes searching hers, a question forming on his lips. "Safe?" he asked, his voice gentle. "What do you mean, safe?" He had never considered his presence as a source of security for anyone, let alone a Fox woman whose composure always seemed so complete. The thought was disarming, yet undeniably intriguing. Aloan took a deep breath, the movement subtle. "My species, the vulpines from Krillos, we are a diverse people," she began, her gaze drifting slightly as if picturing her distant home. "We value strength, wit, and a certain kind of cunning. Power is often expressed through aggressive displays, through dominance. It is our way." Caspian listened intently, the academic part of his mind already trying to categorize and understand. This was the first true glimpse into her world, a world far removed from his textbooks and structured routines. "There are many factions on Krillos," Aloan continued, her voice gaining a quiet intensity, each with its own agenda, its own methods. Internal conflicts are not uncommon. Disputes are often settled with shows of force, with calculated intimidation. Even within families, there is a constant subtle pressure, a testing of boundaries, a need to assert one's position. She paused, her eyes returning to Caspian's. It is a world where vulnerability is a weapon waiting to be exploited. Caspian felt a pang of understanding, a nascent empathy forming within him. He had always taken his relatively peaceful existence on Veridia for granted. The idea of constant vigilance, of every interaction being a potential power play, was alien and unsettling. And you, Aloan continued, her voice softer now, you are different. Your demeanor, your actions, they are gentle. You do not seek to dominate, to intimidate. You observe, you consider. When you finally spoke to me, there was no challenge in your voice, only curiosity. She gestured subtly towards the datapad he still held above them. Even now, you offer shelter without expectation, without a display of ownership. This is not common among my people, not in the way you present it. Her words resonated deeply within Caspian. He had always considered his quiet nature, his methodical approach to life, as simply him. To hear it described as gentle and different in a way that offered her solace was a revelation. He realized that his lack of aggression, his very human inclination towards intellectual curiosity over physical assertion, was an anomaly she found profoundly reassuring. On Krillos, Aloan explained further, even small acts of kindness can be misinterpreted, seen as a weakness to be exploited or a ploy for gain. To offer assistance without an immediate, visible benefit to oneself is almost unheard of in certain circles. It suggests a lack of foresight, a naivety that would make one an easy target. A faint, almost imperceptible shiver ran through her. To show genuine vulnerability is to invite predation. Caspian processed her words, the intricate web of her species' social dynamics slowly unfolding before him. He saw the stark contrast between her world and his own. On Veridia, small acts of consideration were commonplace, a basic social lubricant. Here, she was describing a society where such acts were either a trap or a liability. So my gentleness, Caspian began, choosing her word carefully, it makes you feel safe because it doesn't fit the patterns of aggression you're used to. Aloan nodded, her eyes unwavering. Precisely. It is disarming. It means I do not have to be constantly on guard, constantly analyzing your every move for a hidden agenda. With you there is a certain transparency, a lack of artifice that is rare and precious. She hesitated, then continued, my species also has a heightened sense of perception. We can often sense underlying intentions even when masked, and yours, Caspian, are pure. His heart gave an unexpected lurch at her assessment. Pure. He had never thought of himself in such terms. He was simply a student driven by academic pursuits, a creature of routine. Yet through Aloan's eyes, his ordinary existence took on a new, unexpected significance. He realized her consistent presence, her silent vigil, was not just observation but a careful, calculated proximity to a perceived haven. She had been testing him in her own way, confirming her instincts. The rain began to lessen, softening to a drizzle. The air grew cooler, fresh with the scent of damp earth. The brief shelter under his datapad felt like a profound intimacy, a shared moment of vulnerability and revelation. He understood now that her pursuit of him wasn't a casual interest but a deep, fundamental need for security, a refuge from a world far more brutal and complex than he could have imagined. Caspian felt a profound shift within himself. His initial curiosity had deepened into something far more protective, a sense of responsibility he hadn't anticipated. He saw Aloan not just as the intriguing fox woman from his lectures, but as a being carrying the weight of a challenging existence, seeking solace in his unassuming presence. The thought was humbling. He knew, with a certainty that settled deep within him, that his world, once neatly compartmentalized by study and routine, was about to expand in ways he could not yet fully comprehend. Her confession had opened a door not just to her species, but to a deeper understanding of human nature itself, and his place within it. The silence that had once defined their interactions now felt like a prelude, a quiet space before a deeper, more meaningful connection began to unfold. He looked at her, truly seeing her for the first time, and knew he would not turn away. The rain had finally subsided, leaving the Veridia University campus glistening under a late afternoon sun. What began as an instinctive offer of shelter under his datapad quickly evolved into a new ritual. Daily walks from lectures, once a silent understanding, now consistently led Caspian and Aloan to the campus cafe. Its unobtrusive atmosphere, filled with the low murmur of student conversations, became their private space for revelation. On Krillos, Aloan began one afternoon, tracing the rim of her ceramic mug. Our society is built on a very different foundation than yours, Caspian. We value strength, yes, but more so, we value influence. Power isn't always about physical dominance. Often, it's about who can sway the most minds, who can anticipate the most moves. Caspian listened intently, his gaze fixed on her. The casual setting starkly contrasted with the gravity of her words. So, a kind of political chess, he offered, connecting it to human historical concepts. Aloan nodded, a faint, almost imperceptible flick of her ear indicating agreement. Precisely. But the pieces are living, thinking beings, and the board is constantly shifting. There are major factions, of course. The Obsidian Claw, focused on economic control through trade routes. The Crimson Veil, prioritizing military might and territorial expansion. And the Whispering Sands, a more secretive group, specializing in information gathering and subtle manipulation. He felt a thrill of intrigue, a stark departure from the predictable formulas of his bioengineering studies. This was a complex, living system, far more intricate than any biological process he had ever dissected. Do these factions ever cooperate, or is it a perpetual state of contention? Cooperation is a temporary convenience, Aloan stated, her voice lowering slightly, never a true alliance. Trust is a luxury few can afford. Vulnerability, as I mentioned, is often seen as an invitation for exploitation. This constant struggle, this dance of power, creates what we call the hidden dangers. Not open warfare, usually, but subtle sabotage, the undermining of reputation, the quiet elimination of rivals. Caspian imagined a world where every interaction was weighed, every word a potential weapon. It was a stark contrast to the open, often naive, trust prevalent in Viridian society. How do individuals navigate such a landscape? If trust is so rare, how do you form any kind of stable relationships, or even just conduct daily life without constant paranoia? Aloan met his gaze, a flicker of something he recognized as profound weariness in her eyes. Carefully, and often alone. Or you find someone whose intentions you can read, someone whose nature is so fundamentally different that they pose no threat to your inherent vulnerability. Her last words hung in the air, unspoken yet clearly directed at him. A warmth spread through Caspian's chest. He understood then the full weight of her earlier confession. His unassuming nature, his lack of aggressive intent, was not merely a personality trait for her, but a crucial survival mechanism. He felt a burgeoning sense of responsibility, a quiet determination to be that safe harbor she sought. Human history, too, is full of such struggles. Caspian began, shifting the conversation, though perhaps less overt in its political machinations in recent centuries. We have our own philosophies on governance, on ethics. For a long time, brute force dictated power. Then came the age of empires built on conquest. But eventually we learned, often through immense suffering, that true stability comes from cooperation, from shared principles. He explained the evolution of human legal systems, the concept of treaties between nations, the development of international bodies designed to mediate conflicts peacefully. We have systems of diplomacy, of arbitration. It's not perfect, far from it. There are always those who seek power through less honorable means. But the collective effort, the philosophical underpinning, is that peace and prosperity are best achieved through mutual respect and negotiated solutions, not constant strife. Aloan listened, her head tilted, absorbing his words with an intensity that flattered him. So, you believe a different way is possible, a way where strength is not just about dominance, but about building and protecting. Absolutely, Caspian affirmed. We've faced countless challenges, internal and external. Philosophical movements like the Enlightenment, for example, reshaped our understanding of individual rights and collective good. We have a concept called social contract, where individuals agree to give up certain freedoms for the safety and benefit of the larger group. It's about balance, about finding common ground, even with adversaries. He drew parallels between the Vulpine factions and historical human rivalries, explaining how even ancient enemies eventually found reasons to forge peace, often out of exhaustion from conflict or the realization of mutual benefit. It takes a different kind of strength to compromise, to build bridges, than it does to simply conquer. It takes foresight, empathy, and a willingness to see beyond immediate gain. Eloan's expression softened further, a thoughtful quiet settling over her. Foresight, empathy, these are not qualities highly prized on Krillos, not in the way you describe. They are often seen as weaknesses, vulnerabilities to be exploited. Perhaps, Caspian mused, but they are also the foundation of true resilience. A society built on fear and constant suspicion will eventually fracture from within. One built on shared values, even with disagreements, has a deeper root system. Their conversation stretched into the late afternoons, the cafe becoming a nexus of shared understanding. Eloan found herself opening up more freely, describing the intricate web of Vulpine politics, the subtle threats that permeated even everyday interactions. She spoke of her own upbringing, the constant need to be alert, to project an image of strength even when feeling vulnerable. Caspian, in turn, offered not just historical facts, but philosophical frameworks, ethical considerations, and the human capacity for change and growth. She found a profound solace in his intellect, in his ability to dissect complex problems and offer a different lens through which to view them. His calm, reasoned approach provided a stark contrast to the volatile political landscape of Krillos. He didn't judge her world. He sought to understand it, and in understanding, he offered her new perspectives. The idea that a society could function on principles of cooperation, that vulnerability wasn't always a weakness, began to take root within her. For Caspian, his world expanded exponentially. He was no longer just a student of bioengineering. He was an explorer of interstellar cultures, a confidant to someone navigating immense personal and political dangers. His academic curiosity, once confined to equations and biological processes, now found a thrilling, real-world application. He saw the potential for his knowledge to make a difference, to offer a unique human perspective to Eloan's struggles. The intrigue deepened with every shared word, every nuanced explanation of Vulpine life. He found himself thinking about her world even when alone, trying to reconcile its harsh realities with the gentle spirit of the foxwoman beside him. Their bond of trust solidified with each passing day. Eloan began to relax in his presence, her posture less guarded, her gaze less watchful. She would lean slightly closer when explaining a particularly complex aspect of Krillos, her tail, typically held straight and stiff, occasionally giving a soft, almost imperceptible twitch of contentment. Caspian, in turn, felt a growing sense of warmth and protectiveness towards her, a quiet strength emerging within him that he hadn't known he possessed. He realized his initial intrigue had blossomed into something far more profound, a connection that transcended species and worlds, weaving their disparate lives into a single, unfolding narrative. He knew, with unwavering certainty, that he wanted to continue exploring this new, intertwined path with her, wherever it might lead. The Veridia University campus cafe, with its soft, diffused lighting, became their sanctuary. They sat at their usual table, untouched mugs steaming gently between them. Eloan's gaze, usually so guarded, held a new gravity as she looked at Caspian. He felt a shift in the air, a prelude to something significant. "Caspian," she began, her voice a low murmur, "what I am about to tell you is not for anyone else. It concerns my world, Krillos, but also, in a way, yours." He nodded, a quiet readiness settling over him. "I'm listening." I'm not here merely as a student, Aloan confessed, her ears flattening slightly, a subtle sign of vulnerability. My presence on Viridia is a diplomatic mission. I am an envoy, tasked with establishing a crucial treaty between Krillos and Viridia. Caspian's mind raced. An envoy, a diplomat. This was far beyond the quiet foxwoman he had come to know. A treaty, against whom? Aloan leaned forward, her voice dropping further. There is a faction within Krillos, the Shadow Claws, who believe our species should dominate, not cooperate. They are rogue, operating outside the legitimate Vulpine Council. They see alliances as weakness, especially with species they consider inferior. Her eyes met his, a flicker of pain in their depths. They view humans that way. A cold thread of understanding wove through Caspian. Her earlier words about feeling safe with him, about his gentle nature contrasting with Krillo's aggressive culture, now held a terrifying new context. Her vulnerability was not just personal, it was political, existential. The Shadow Claws seek to destabilize the region, Aloan continued. They are gaining power quietly, insidiously. The Vulpine Council, the legitimate government, understands that only an alliance with a strong, stable world like Viridia can counter their growing influence and prevent a wider conflict. But my mission here is delicate. Many Vulpines, even outside the Shadow Claws, harbor deep mistrust towards humans. They believe you are too soft, too emotional, easily manipulated. Caspian felt a surge of indignation, quickly tempered by his logical mind. He understood the perception, even if he disagreed with it. And your presence here, seeking this alliance, makes you a target. Precisely, she affirmed. My mission is clandestine to a degree. Publicly, I am merely an exchange student. But the Shadow Claws have spies, informants. If they discover my true purpose, or if they can discredit me, the treaty will fail. Krillos would be left vulnerable, and the Shadow Claws would seize control, plunging our world into chaos and potentially igniting an interstellar war. He absorbed her words, the weight of them pressing down. This was not just about two individuals finding connection, it was about the fate of worlds. His academic curiosity transformed into a fierce sense of purpose. He saw the intricate dance of power, the subtle machinations she navigated daily. He understood why she had been so guarded, why his unassuming presence had offered such profound refuge. It was not just emotional safety, it was literal, strategic safety. So your constant presence near me, Caspian mused, connecting the dots, was not just about finding comfort. It was a calculated move, a way to appear as a normal student, perhaps even to use my own routine as a shield. Aloan met his gaze, a hint of admiration in her eyes. Partially. My handlers advised me to integrate to appear as mundane as possible. And yes, your consistent routine, your unassuming nature made it easy for me to blend in. But beyond that, she paused, a softer emotion entering her voice. Your presence offered something more. A genuine sense of calm, a shield against the constant vigilance I usually endure. He felt a profound warmth spread through him. To be a shield, to offer that peace, was an honor he hadn't sought but now embraced. What can I do? He asked, his voice steady, resolute. Aloan looked at him, her expression softening even further. For now, simply continue our routine. Your friendship, your perspective, is invaluable. It helps me see a path forward that isn't dictated by aggression or fear. Their conversation continued, delving deeper into the nuances of Vulpine politics, the history of the Shadow Claws, and the delicate balance of power on Krillos. Caspian asked insightful questions, drawing on his understanding of human history and diplomacy, offering parallels and potential strategies. He saw the enormity of her task, and the immense courage it took for her to confide in him. He knew he was no longer just a student with a unique friendship. He was now a silent participant in an interstellar struggle. Later that evening, the campus bathed in the soft glow of distant Viridian city lights. Caspian walked alone towards his dorm, his mind still reeling from Aloan's revelations. The weight of her secret, the potential implications, settled heavily upon him. He passed the main lecture hall, its entrance now dimly lit and deserted. The usual quiet of the late hour was broken by a faint murmur. He paused, curiosity piqued. The sounds were guttural, a language he didn't recognize, spoken in hushed, urgent tones from the shadows near a rarely used service entrance. Caspian instinctively moved closer, his steps light, his scientific mind now fully engaged in observation. He saw two figures, cloaked in dark, heavy fabric that obscured their forms. One was taller, broader, but the other, smaller and more agile, caught his attention. It moved with a familiar swiftness, a quick flick of a narrow tail disappearing beneath its cloak. The shape of its ears, barely visible under the hood, was distinctly vulpine. The smaller figure, turning slightly, spoke again in the alien dialect, its voice a low growl. Then, its head subtly tilted towards the main lecture hall entrance, the very spot where Aloan often waited for him. It was a deliberate, calculating movement. Caspian felt a jolt. This cloaked vulpine was observing, assessing. He knew with a chilling certainty that this was no random encounter. The hushed conversation, the hidden forms, the specific direction of their gaze, it all clicked into place. He moved silently past, pretending not to notice them, his heart pounding a steady rhythm against his ribs. The words Aloan had spoken just hours ago echoed in his mind. The shadow claws have spies, informants. His initial unease, his quiet intrigue, had transformed into something far more urgent. Aloan's expressed safety concerns were not merely emotional. They were real, immediate, and tangible. The danger she had hinted at, the very threat to her mission and her life, was lurking in the shadows of Veridia University, watching, waiting. He had to act. Caspian found Aloan at their usual cafe booth, nursing a nutrient paste, her gaze distant. He slid into the seat opposite her, the scent of synth coffee and sweet pastries filling the air. "I saw them," Caspian stated, his voice low, cutting through the cafe's soft murmur. Aloan's head snapped up, her ears twitching almost imperceptibly. Her eyes, usually warm, held a sudden sharpness. "Who?" she asked, her tone flat, guarded. "Two figures cloaked," he clarified, leaning forward slightly. "Near the lecture hall's service entrance late last night. One was vulpine. They were watching the spot where you usually wait for me." A flicker of something, recognition, perhaps fear, crossed Aloan's face before settling back into a careful neutrality. "You are certain of the vulpine identification?" The tail, the ear shape, even a certain quickness of movement, Caspian confirmed, recalling the details with scientific precision. And the way they looked at that specific spot, it was deliberate, Aloan, not coincidence. She exhaled slowly, a soft sound. "I had a feeling," she admitted, her voice barely audible, a growing unease. "They are becoming bolder. My presence here is known to certain factions on Krillos, the Shadow Claws." Caspian felt a tightening in his chest. "You knew they were watching you. Why didn't you say anything?" Aloan met his gaze, her expression complex. "To admit vulnerability is to invite exploitation among my kind, Caspian, especially when the stakes are this high. My mission is delicate. Any sign of weakness, any misstep could unravel everything." She paused. "I did not want to involve you further than I already had." "You are involved," Caspian countered, his voice firm. "We are involved. Your mission, your safety, it's not something I can simply observe from a distance now. Not after what I saw." He considered her words about vulpine culture. "But my world is different. Humans value protecting those they care about, not exploiting their vulnerabilities. I want to help." Aloan studied him, a long, assessing look that seemed to probe his very core. "How would you propose to help?" "They're watching you," Caspian began, outlining his nascent idea. "But they aren't watching me. I'm just a human student, meticulous, predictable. My routine is my shield. I blend in. I can move through this campus, observe, listen, without drawing their attention." "You would become an informant?" Aloan questioned, a hint of surprise in her voice. "An observer," Caspian corrected. a gatherer of information. My academic schedule is a perfect cover. I can alter my routes subtly, extend my library hours, spend time in overlooked corners of campus, places where they might operate or where they might communicate. Aloan leaned back, her ears now fully alert, processing his proposal. The shadow claws operate with extreme caution. They communicate in coded bursts, using frequency shifts that are difficult to trace without specialized equipment. I have specialized equipment, Caspian said, a faint smile touching his lips. As a bioengineering student, I have access to sophisticated sensory apparatus. Directional microphones, thermal scanners, frequency analyzers, tools that can be repurposed, and I know how to use them discreetly. Her gaze sharpened, a spark of intrigue replacing her earlier caution. Repurposed. You would risk your academic standing perhaps more for this. The treaty you seek is vital, Aloan, Caspian stated, his conviction unwavering. You explained its importance to Viridia, not just Krylos. A stable alliance, a counter to aggression. This isn't just about you anymore. It's about protecting two worlds. He paused, then added, and honestly, I don't like the idea of anyone threatening you. A warmth spread across Aloan's face, a genuine, unburdened smile. You truly are unlike any Vulpine I have ever known, or any human for that matter. She considered his plan. Your unassuming nature is indeed an advantage. They would never suspect a human student of active intelligence gathering. Exactly, Caspian affirmed. I can move through the campus like a ghost. I can identify their patterns, their meeting points, perhaps even their methods of communication. We need to know who they are, how many, and what their immediate objective is. Their objective is to destabilize my mission, Aloan explained. To paint Viridia as an untrustworthy, volatile ally. To sow discord among the Vulpine delegates once they arrive. They will attempt to discredit me, perhaps even orchestrate an incident. Then we need to be a step ahead, Caspian said. My role would be to provide the raw data, the observations. You, with your understanding of Krylos politics and Vulpine methods, will interpret it. It will be a true partnership. Aloan nodded slowly, her expression thoughtful. It is audacious and dangerous if they were to discover your involvement. They won't, Caspian interrupted, his voice calm, resolute. I am a master of blending into the background. My life has been one of quiet observation and meticulous detail. This is just applying those skills to a different kind of problem. He looked at her, his expression earnest. Are you willing to trust me with this? The question hung in the air, charged with unspoken weight. Aloan held his gaze, her eyes reflecting a profound internal struggle. Trust was a concept fraught with peril on Krylos, yet with Caspian it felt different. His steady presence, his unwavering support had become her unexpected anchor. He saw her vulnerability not as a weakness to exploit, but as a reason to protect. Yes, she finally said, her voice soft but firm. I am. I have come to trust you more than anyone, Caspian, more than I thought possible. A quiet sense of relief washed over Caspian, mingling with the renewed urgency of their task. Their conversation had shifted the ground beneath them. No longer was he merely a source of emotional safety. He was now an active participant, an ally in a dangerous, interstellar game. They spent another hour in the cafe, meticulously planning. Caspian described the specific sensors he could access and how he might conceal them. Aloan detailed the subtle cues of Shadow Claw's operatives, the types of coded messages they might use, the potential weaknesses they might expose. They discussed safe communication methods, establishing a secure data channel through Caspian's university network, encrypted and masked within his academic project files. His meticulousness, once a solitary trait, now became a crucial asset in their shared endeavor. I can extend my thesis research to include environmental energy signatures around campus, Caspian suggested, a glint of strategic thinking in his eyes. It would allow me to deploy discrete sensors in various locations without raising suspicion. Brilliant, Aloan murmured, a rare admiration in her tone. It provides a cover and a reason for your presence in unusual areas. They finalized a schedule for exchanging information, careful not to deviate from their established student-friend routine too much, yet building in deliberate, subtle opportunities for data transfer. Their connection deepened with each calculated risk they discussed, each potential danger they anticipated. The cafe, once a place of quiet conversation, now hummed with the silent intensity of their burgeoning partnership. Later, as twilight painted the campus in hues of deep violet and fading orange, they walked from the cafe towards their respective dorms. The air was cool, carrying the faint scent of damp earth and distant flora. The usual chatter of students had dwindled, replaced by a peaceful quiet. Aloan walked beside him, her steps mirroring his. The silence between them was different now, not the comfortable quiet of emerging friendship, but the charged stillness of shared purpose. Caspian felt a profound sense of responsibility, a powerful surge of protectiveness for this unique being beside him. He understood the immense courage it took for her to trust him, a human with her mission, her life. Her hand, small and delicate with soft fur along the back, reached out. It found his, her fingers gently intertwining with his own. The touch was light, yet utterly firm, a silent declaration. Caspian's breath hitched. He looked down at their joined hands, then met Aloan's gaze. Her eyes, usually so guarded, were now clear, vulnerable, and filled with an unspoken gratitude that radiated warmth. There was no need for words. The gesture spoke volumes. It was not a romantic overture in the traditional sense, not yet, but something far deeper and more profound. This was an alliance, a silent vow, a tangible connection forged in the crucible of shared danger and unwavering trust. Her vulnerability, once a secret burden, was now a strength they both carried. He felt the shift, a palpable transformation in their bond. It was no longer just about offering her a haven of emotional safety. It was about standing with her, hand in hand, against the tangible, immediate threat that lurked in the shadows of Viridia, ready to strike. The fight was real, and they were in it together. Caspian began his covert observations the very next morning. His bioengineering lab access granted him equipment capable of subtle surveillance, designed for microscopic analysis but adaptable. He deployed miniature, passive thermal sensors near the lecture hall where Aloan often waited, and at the cafe's perimeter. These sensors, disguised as innocuous data collection units for environmental studies, would register unusual heat signatures and movement patterns. He meticulously calibrated them to differentiate between student traffic and consistent, anomalous presence. He spent his evenings not on his coursework, but hunched over his personal terminal, cross-referencing sensor data with campus security logs he could access through his research assistant credentials. The cloaked vulpine, or rather, two distinct individuals, showed up intermittently. Their patterns were erratic enough to avoid detection by casual observation, but predictable to Caspian's algorithms. They never entered buildings but lingered at specific exterior points. A secluded bench near the campus arboretum, a rarely used service entrance behind the library, and a cluster of overgrown bushes overlooking the main quad. "They're not just watching you," Caspian told Aloan 2 days later, showing her a map on his datapad. "They're performing reconnaissance, establishing surveillance points." Aloan leaned closer, her tail twitching slightly as she studied the marked locations. "This is more organized than I anticipated." Her voice was low, thoughtful. "They are patient. This suggests a larger objective than simple harassment." Caspian nodded. "They communicate through a dead drop, too. A hollowed-out section of that old oak by the arboretum path. I recorded faint energy signatures from data transfers." He had used a modified spectrographic scanner, designed for cellular analysis, to detect the residual energy from encrypted data bursts. "Excellent work, Caspian," Aloan said, a genuine warmth in her tone. Can you intercept the data? Not directly without risking detection, he admitted, but I can capture the energy pulses. If you can decode their frequency and modulation, we might be able to reconstruct the transmissions. Over the next few days, their routine shifted. Caspian would collect the faint energy readings from the dead drop site, careful to maintain his student persona, sometimes pretending to examine a rare plant species nearby. He fed the raw data to Aloan, who possessed an innate understanding of vulpine communications, honed by years navigating Krillos's intricate political landscape. Aloan worked tirelessly in her dorm room, her small, advanced vulpine comms unit connected to Caspian's datapad. She described the challenge. Their encryption is sophisticated. It's not just a digital lock, it's interwoven with cultural nuances, almost like a vocal dialect translated into code. She spent hours, sometimes late into the night, her brow furrowed in concentration, meticulously analyzing the captured energy pulses. They refer to you as the Weaver, Aloan stated one evening, pushing her furred ears back slightly. They sat in the cafe, long after the last students had left, using the quiet for their clandestine work, and to themselves as the Shadow Claws. Caspian felt a cold knot tighten in his stomach. The faction you mentioned. Precisely, and they speak of severing the thread of the alliance. She tapped a sequence on her datapad, displaying a partial translation. This message is about discrediting my efforts, spreading misinformation among the Viridian delegates. How? Caspian asked, leaning forward. What exactly are they planning? Aloan exhaled slowly. They intend to portray humans as unreliable, aggressive partners. They speak of provocation and demonstrating human hostility. Caspian's mind raced, piecing together the fragments. Provocation. They want to bait humans into an incident, make it look like Viridia attacked you or was complicit in an attack. Worse, Aloan countered, her voice barely a whisper. They want to stage an attack on me and make it appear as if humans are responsible. They believe this will sour the treaty negotiations beyond repair. They want to incite fear among the vulpine delegates against Viridia. Caspian felt a jolt of understanding, sharp and chilling. A false flag operation. On campus. They'll use their own technology, their own agents, and make it seem like human aggression. He clenched his fist under the table. They know you're the key to the treaty. If they can remove you or discredit you, the alliance collapses. My species has a history of internal conflict, Aloan explained, her gaze distant for a moment. Exploiting vulnerability is their way. They know my initial vulnerability with you, my seeking a haven, could be twisted into a weakness they can exploit. They will frame it as human manipulation, not genuine connection. A wave of anger, cold and precise, swept through Caspian. We won't let them. His voice was firm, resolute. We have to anticipate their moves. We have to expose them. Their collaboration intensified. Caspian became a ghost, moving through the campus shadows, deploying more sophisticated, almost invisible monitoring devices. He leveraged his bioengineering knowledge to miniaturize and conceal recording equipment, placing them near the Shadow Claws' identified surveillance points and potential communication hubs. He meticulously mapped their patrol routes, their shift changes, their blind spots. Aloan, in turn, dedicated every waking hour to decrypting the remaining fragments of their communications. Her understanding of vulpine idioms, coded language, and subtle inflections allowed her to unlock deeper layers of meaning. She discovered their intention to isolate her, to cut off her contact with the Viridian Council, making her an easier target. They're planning to move soon, Aloan announced one morning, her eyes tired but determined. The messages indicate a demonstration during the upcoming Viridia Krillos's cultural exchange event. It will happen on campus. Caspian felt a rush of adrenaline. That's why they were mapping the quad. High visibility, many witnesses, perfect for a staged incident. He brought up a holographic campus map. Where would they strike? a place with maximum impact but also escape routes. They spent hours analyzing the map, considering camera angles, student flow, and the layout of the cultural exchange booths. Caspian's analytical mind, usually focused on biochemical pathways, was now fully immersed in tactical planning. Alowan's insights into Vulpine psychology, their predilection for dramatic display and symbolic locations, proved invaluable. The fountain Alowan finally pointed, her finger landing on the central campus fountain, a frequent gathering spot. It's prominent, easily accessible, and you often waited for me there. Caspian stared at the fountain on the map. The irony was not lost on him. A place of their early, silent communication, now targeted for a destructive deception. He felt a fierce protective instinct surge within him. We know their method, Caspian stated, his gaze fixed on the fountain. They want to frame humans. They'll use Vulpine agents, probably disguised, and employ Vulpine tech made to look like something else. They will create chaos, Alowan added, then disappear, leaving the blame squarely on Viridia. The pressure was immense, but their alliance held firm, growing stronger with each passing hour. They moved with a remarkable synchronicity, Caspian's meticulous data analysis complementing Alowan's intuitive understanding of Vulpine motivations. They ate hurried meals together, their discussions punctuated by intense bursts of planning. The initial warmth of their bond had deepened into an unbreakable trust, a shared purpose that transcended their disparate origins. They were a single unit, their minds working in tandem, fueled by a fierce determination to protect the fragile peace they had dared to build. Alowan often found herself looking at Caspian, recognizing the quiet strength in his focused eyes, the unwavering support in his presence. He was not just a shield, he was a sword, and together they would face the coming storm. The rogue Vulpine faction, known as the Shadow Claws, moved with chilling precision. Their intercepted communications, now fully decrypted, outlined the final stages of their deception. A small, elite team disguised as innocent cultural exchange attendees would position themselves around the central fountain. Their target, Alowan, at the peak of the event's attendance. The planned attack was designed for maximum visual impact, intended to ignite fear and resentment against Viridia. The false flag would be undeniable, or so they believed. They intend to use a sonic disruptor, Alowan stated, pointing to a detail in the translated message on Caspian's datapad. It's a Vulpine-specific device, emits a frequency that incapacitates us, causes disorientation. It won't harm humans, but it will look like a violent act. Caspian frowned. A sonic disruptor. That explains why they want to frame humans. It would be impossible for Viridian security to trace it to Vulpine tech without deep analysis. By then, the damage is done. Precisely, Alowan confirmed, her tail twitching with a rare flicker of anxiety. The chaos, the panic. They want the immediate visual, the emotional response. Then they vanish. They sat in the quiet solitude of Caspian's dorm room, the academic clutter a stark contrast to the high-stakes planning unfolding between them. The map of Viridia University campus, projected onto his desk, glowed faintly. The central fountain was highlighted, a bright, ominous circle. "We have to let it happen," Caspian said, his voice low, a tremor of reluctance in it. "If we stop them before they act, we have no proof, no way to expose them to the council." Alowan nodded slowly. "I agree. It is the only way, but the risk is immense, for me." "I will be there," Caspian promised, his gaze unwavering, closer than anyone else. "I will ensure your safety, Alowan. You have my word." His conviction resonated deep within her. It was not a boast, but a solemn vow. She trusted him implicitly, a trust forged in shared vulnerability and common purpose. "The cameras," Alowan began, refocusing. "Where can you place them without detection?" Caspian leaned over the projected map, his finger tracing lines. "There are 3 main vantage points around the fountain. The base of the Athena statue, a low-hanging branch of the ancient oak nearby, and the decorative planter box on the east side. Each offers a clear, unobstructed view of the fountain plaza. Miniature, I presume? Elowen inquired. Of course, Caspian confirmed. Modified optical sensors from my bioengineering lab. They are tiny, barely larger than a speck of dust and self-adhesive. I can camouflage them perfectly. The thought of Caspian placing these devices, moving through the bustling cultural exchange unnoticed, filled Elowen with a peculiar mix of admiration and apprehension. He was stepping far outside his quiet academic life, all for her, for their mission. Their planning session stretched late into the night. They meticulously timed Elowen's approach to the fountain, calculating the precise moment the shadow claws would initiate their attack. Elowen would be walking from the main administration building, a routine she often followed before her afternoon classes. The cultural exchange event provided the perfect cover for the Vulpine agents to blend in. I will need to be convincing, Elowen mused, visualizing the scene. They must believe they have succeeded. I will need to appear disoriented, vulnerable. Caspian's jaw tightened. It will be difficult, but it is vital for the cameras to capture their full intent, their aggression, the use of their technology. And the signal? Elowen asked. How do we alert Viridian security without alerting the shadow claws? Caspian pulled a small, innocuous-looking comlink from his pocket. This is a standard student comm unit. I've programmed it with a single, unique burst frequency. It will transmit a silent alert to the head of Viridian Campus Security, Officer Thorne. He's a friend of my father, completely trustworthy. He owes my father a favor. Elowen raised an eyebrow. A favor? How convenient. Caspian offered a small, rare smile. My father helped him once with a particularly tricky biohazard containment incident. Thorne is discreet and efficient. The signal is designed to be almost instantaneous, a microburst, untraceable by standard Vulpine scanners which are geared for longer range, less precise signals. Clever, Elowen acknowledged, and the moment you send it. When the sonic disruptor activates, Caspian explained, the moment I see them deploy it. That will be the trigger. Security will be on standby, ready to move in immediately after the signal. The weight of their plan settled heavily between them. They were orchestrating a confrontation, a carefully choreographed exposure of deception. Every detail had to be perfect. One misstep and Elowen's mission, and perhaps her life, would be in jeopardy. Elowen then turned her attention to the most critical piece of their counteroffensive, her speech. It was not enough to merely expose the shadow claws. She had to leverage the incident to solidify the treaty. My speech to the Viridian Council, she began, packing the small space. It must be powerful, undeniable. It needs to articulate the danger, the necessity of our alliance. Caspian watched her, seeing the transformation from the quiet, observing fox woman into the fierce diplomat she truly was. Her mind raced, forming arguments, crafting phrases. You need to speak of their motivations, Caspian suggested, why they would go to such lengths, the destabilization, the anti-human sentiment. Yes, Elowen affirmed, and the contrast, the peace we seek, the shared future, the bravery of those who stand against such division. Her eyes met Caspian's, and the unexpected alliances. She spent the next 2 days in a secluded study nook in the Viridia University library, hunting her address. She imagined the council members, their faces skeptical, then slowly convinced. She practiced her delivery, modulating her voice, ensuring every word carried weight. The words flowed from her, a blend of diplomatic necessity and heartfelt conviction. She would speak of the inherent value of cooperation, of the Viridian ideals Caspian had shared with her, ideals that resonated deeply with her own hope for Krylos. She would speak of the Shadow Claw's contempt for humanity, a prejudice she knew Caspian, with his quiet strength, had unequivocally disproven. Meanwhile, Caspian moved with the subtlety of a phantom. During the pre-event setup, amidst the bustling activity of students and vendors, he seamlessly integrated himself. He carried a small toolkit, ostensibly for adjusting display stands, a perfect cover. His eyes, usually focused on textbooks, now scanned for opportunities, for blind spots. He found the perfect spot at the base of the Athena statue, a small crevice in the weathered stone. The modified optical sensor, no bigger than his thumbnail, blended perfectly. He carefully applied a thin layer of bioresin, ensuring it was secure and camouflaged. Next, the ancient oak, a slightly larger challenge. He waited until a group of students gathered nearby, creating a momentary distraction, then swiftly climbed a low branch, placing the second sensor amongst the dense leaves, angled perfectly towards the fountain. The final sensor went into the decorative planter box, nestled amongst the vibrant alien flora, its lens peeking out like a tiny, watchful eye. He tested each one remotely with his comlink, confirming their clear visual feeds. The images flickered to life on his datapad, a panoramic view of the fountain, the surrounding booths, the nascent crowd. Perfect. Caspian met Aloan later that evening at their usual cafe booth. The air between them was thick with anticipation. He gave her a brief, reassuring nod. All sensors are in place, he reported, his voice low, fully operational. The feeds are secure. Aloan let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Good, my speech is ready, every word, every inflection. Tomorrow then, Caspian said, the gravity of the statement hanging in the air. Aloan reached across the table, her hand finding his. Her fur was soft against his skin. This time there was no silent vow. It was a reaffirmation, a shared understanding that their individual fates were now inextricably linked. Their alliance was not just a strategy, it was a bond strong and unyielding. They were ready. The trap was set. Their countermove was prepared. The coming storm would either shatter their hopes or forge a new, brighter future for two worlds. It all hinged on tomorrow. The next morning arrived, clear and bright, belying the tension that tightened every nerve in Caspian's body. He arrived early at the central fountain, his bioengineering kit slung over his shoulder. The cultural exchange was already drawing a respectable crowd. Booths decorated with vibrant banners offered alien crafts and exotic delicacies. Laughter and music filled the air, a stark contrast to the grim reality hidden beneath the festive veneer. Caspian moved with purpose, adjusting a display stand near the Athena statue, his eyes subtly sweeping the area, confirming his cameras remained undisturbed. He saw the two cloaked figures, just as Aloan had described. They moved with a predatory grace, their gazes fixed on the main thoroughfare where Aloan would soon appear. Caspian felt a cold knot in his stomach. This was real. Aloan approached the fountain with a deliberate calm. Her usual vibrant red hair was meticulously styled, her leather jacket a familiar comfort against the cool morning air. She scanned the crowd, her vulpine senses finely tuned, pinpointing the two Shadow Claw's agents already positioning themselves. She met Caspian's gaze across the bustling plaza, a flicker of acknowledgement passing between them. He gave a fractional nod, a silent affirmation that all was in place. Aloan felt the familiar tremor of fear, but it was quickly overshadowed by a fierce resolve. She was not just a diplomat, she was a shield for her people and for the peace she sought. Her mission was everything. The Shadow Claw's agents began their move. One, taller and broader, peeled away, creating a subtle distraction near a food stall. The other, slighter but with an intense focus, began to weave through the crowd, heading directly for Aloan. Caspian watched, his hand subtly resting on his comlink, feeling the faint vibrations of the active sensors. He saw the glint of metal in the agent's hand, disguised as a souvenir but unmistakably the sonic disruptor. The moment was upon them. Aloan positioned herself near the fountain's edge, appearing to admire a water feature. She could feel the disruptor's low-frequency thrum even before it fully activated. The world around her blurred as the device pulsed, a focused wave of debilitating energy aimed directly at her. She gasped, her body tensing, her legs buckling. Her vision swam, the festive colors of the exchange bleeding into indistinct smears. She clutched her head, letting out a convincing cry of pain, her fall expertly controlled, crumpling to her knees by the water. She forced herself to appear disoriented, helpless. The smaller Shadow Claw agent moved swiftly, dropping the disruptor and pulling a small, bladed weapon from their cloak. Their intention was clear: to create maximum chaos, to make it appear as if a human had attacked an incapacitated vulpine. The agent's lips curled in a snarl, speaking in rapid Krylosian, words of contempt and triumph. "This is for Krylos, for our sovereignty," they hissed, their voice raw with fanaticism. They raised the blade, feigning an attack that would be interrupted, leaving Aloan vulnerable and a human framed. Caspian saw it all. The disruptor clearly visible as it fell, the agent's face contorted with malicious intent, the blade poised to strike. He pressed a specific sequence of buttons on his datapad, activating a pre-recorded, coded burst of static that only Viridian security frequency would interpret as an immediate alert. Simultaneously, he watched the feeds from the Athena statue, the oak, and the planter box, confirming every crucial second was being captured in high definition. The footage was undeniable. His heart hammered, but his hands remained steady, his focus absolute. Just as the Shadow Claw agent brought the blade down, a blur of Viridian security uniforms converged on the fountain. They moved with practiced efficiency, their stunners already drawn. The crowd reacted with gasps and murmurs of alarm. The agent froze, then tried to pivot, but it was too late. Two security officers tackled them, securing the blade and the still pulsing sonic disruptor. The taller Shadow Claw agent, seeing their partner apprehended, attempted to flee, but was intercepted by another team of officers. The entire confrontation lasted mere seconds. Aloan slowly pushed herself up, feigning lingering disorientation. She brushed a hand over her temple, her eyes scanning the scene, a masterful portrayal of a victim. She met Caspian's gaze again. His expression was grim but resolute. They had done it. The trap was sprung. Within hours, Aloan stood before the Viridian Council. The room was austere, the faces of the council members etched with concern and curiosity. Caspian stood beside her, his datapad linked to the large display screen at the front of the chamber. Aloan began her address, her voice clear and unwavering, despite the feigned weakness she had displayed moments earlier. "Counselors," Aloan began, her gaze sweeping across their faces, "I stand before you today not just as a diplomat, but as a survivor of an attempted act of sabotage. An act designed to shatter the fragile peace we seek to build." She paused, allowing her words to sink in. "The Shadow Claws faction, a rogue element within my own species, believes an alliance between Krylos and Viridia is an affront. They have sought to undermine my mission at every turn, culminating in a direct attack this morning at your campus cultural exchange." Caspian activated the display. The screen flickered to life, showing the panoramic view from the Athena statue. The footage was crisp, undeniable. It showed the Shadow Claws agent approaching Aloan, the activation of the sonic disruptor. The council members leaned forward, their expressions hardening. "As you can see," Aloan continued, her voice gaining strength, "they deployed a localized sonic disruptor designed to incapacitate. My feigned distress was a necessary part of our counter-strategy." Caspian zoomed in on the disruptor as it fell, then on the agent's face as they drew the bladed weapon. The agent's hateful words, recorded by the hidden microphone in the planter box, were played, translated for the council. The sound of their fanaticism filled the room. Their intention, Aloan stated, was to stage a false flag attack, to make it appear as if a human had assaulted an incapacitated vulpine, thereby inciting anti-human sentiment and collapsing these crucial treaty negotiations. The footage then showed Viridian Security's swift intervention, the apprehension of both agents, and the securing of the disruptor and weapon. The room was silent, save for the hushed murmurs of the council members. "This evidence, meticulously gathered by my ally Caspian," Aloan said, gesturing to him, "is irrefutable. It proves the Shadow Claw's duplicity. It proves their willingness to resort to violence and deceit to prevent peace." Caspian nodded, his gaze firm. He felt a surge of pride, not for himself but for their shared success, for Aloan's courage. "The threat from the Shadow Claws is real and immediate," Aloan concluded, her voice ringing with conviction. "They will stop at nothing to destabilize our worlds. This incident is not merely an attack on me. It is an attack on the very concept of cooperation, on the hope of a shared future. It solidifies the urgent, undeniable need for the alliance between Krylos and Veridia. We must stand together against such aggression, or we risk falling prey to it, one world at a time." The lead counselor, a stern-faced woman with silver hair, cleared her throat. "Envoy Aloan, Caspian, your courage and foresight are commendable. The evidence presented is indeed conclusive. This council will convene immediately to finalize the treaty. We will also issue a formal condemnation of the Shadow Claws and pledge our full support to Krylos in neutralizing this rogue faction." A wave of relief washed over Aloan, visible only in the slight softening of her shoulders. She glanced at Caspian, a genuine smile replacing her diplomatic composure. He returned it, a warmth spreading through him. Their alliance, forged in quiet campus walks and hushed cafe conversations, had just averted an interstellar crisis. The storm had come, and they had weathered it together. The Veridian Council chamber shimmered with subdued light. 1 week after the chaotic cultural exchange, the air hummed with anticipation, not tension. Aloan stood at the central podium, her diplomatic attire impeccable, her gaze sweeping across the assembled Veridian counselors and Krylos delegates. Caspian watched from the designated observers section, a quiet strength in his posture. The lead counselor, the silver-haired woman, began the formal proceedings. "Today marks a pivotal moment in our shared history. The Veridia-Krylos Alliance Treaty stands as a testament to cooperation, resilience, and the courage of two individuals." Her eyes met Aloan, then Caspian's. "Envoy Aloan, your steadfast dedication to peace, even in the face of grave threats, is deeply respected." Aloan nodded, a faint, proud smile touching her lips. She felt the weight of her mission finally lift, replaced by a profound sense of accomplishment. She remembered her first days on Veridia, observing Caspian, a silent plea for safety in his unassuming routine. Now that silent plea had blossomed into a formidable, interstellar alliance. The counselor continued, "And Caspian, your ingenuity and bravery were instrumental in exposing the treachery that sought to divide us. You are an honorary citizen of Krylos and a true hero of Veridia." Caspian felt a blush rise, a familiar discomfort with public praise. He shifted slightly, his focus remaining on Aloan. He was not a hero, he was simply a man who had helped his friend. The thought brought a warmth to his chest. He had stepped out of his meticulous academic world and into something far larger, far more real, and he wouldn't change a single moment. "The treaty documents are ready for final signatory ratification," the counselor announced. Aloan stepped forward, her hand steady as she affixed her official seal to the parchment. A Krylos delegate followed, then the lead Veridian counselor. Each signature was a decisive stroke against division, a bold declaration of unity. The chamber erupted in applause, a wave of genuine relief and celebration. After the formal ceremony, the chamber transformed into a space for dignified celebration. Dignitaries from both worlds mingled, offering congratulations. Aloan, at the center of a swirling crowd, exchanged polite greetings, but her eyes consistently sought Caspian. He stood slightly apart, a calm anchor in the celebratory storm. Their gazes met across the room. A silent understanding passed between them, a shared history of danger and triumph. She navigated the crowd with practiced ease, eventually reaching him. "It is done," she said, her voice soft, almost disbelieving. "It is," Caspian confirmed. He felt a quiet elation. The relief was immense, a heavy burden lifted from both their shoulders. The shadow claws will not trouble Krillos or Veridia again. Their leadership was apprehended, their network dismantled. "Thanks to you," Aloan said, her eyes shining with sincere gratitude. "Your cameras, your quick thinking. Without you, the treaty would have crumbled and Krillos would have faced a civil conflict fueled by distrust." "We did it together," Caspian corrected gently. "Your courage, your diplomatic skill, you put yourself in harm's way." She reached out, her fingers brushing his arm. "You were my shield, Caspian, my haven." She paused, a deeper emotion entering her gaze. "My partner." He covered her hand with his own, their fingers intertwining naturally, seamlessly. The touch was familiar, comforting, a silent language they had perfected. He looked into her eyes, seeing not just the accomplished diplomat but the vulnerable foxwoman who had sought refuge in his quiet routine. He was no longer an oblivious student. He was entirely present, fully aware, and deeply connected. "What happens now?" Caspian asked, his voice low. The question hung in the air, weighted with unspoken possibilities. Aloan squeezed his hand. "The Krillos delegation will depart within a few days. My official mission concludes. My people will begin the long process of rebuilding trust, but the alliance with Veridia provides a foundation." She took a deep breath. "I can return to Krillos, to my duties, to my family." Caspian felt a pang in his chest. The thought of her leaving, of their daily walks, their cafe conversations ending, was a stark void. He had grown accustomed to her presence, to the intricate dance of their shared lives. "And you will." Aloan's gaze searched his. "I have a choice now. Krillos is my home, my heritage, but a part of me has found a new home here, Caspian, with you." Her thumb gently stroked the back of his hand. "This alliance, it is not just between our worlds, it is between us." Caspian's heart swelled. He understood. His own life, once meticulously planned around academia, had been irrevocably altered. He had discovered a capacity for action, for courage, for connection he never knew he possessed, and it was all because of her. "I don't want you to leave," he admitted, the words simple, honest. "I have my studies here, my life, but my life feels incomplete without you in it, Aloan." He met her eyes, a silent plea mirroring her own from months ago. "Stay, or if Krillos calls, I will come. We will find a way." Aloan's smile widened, radiating warmth. It was a smile of pure relief, of profound belonging. "My species values strength, Caspian, but I have learned that true strength lies not in aggression but in connection, in vulnerability shared, in trust earned." She leaned closer, her voice a soft murmur. "You showed me that. You taught me that a different way is possible, a way where I am safe, where I am truly seen. And you taught me that life extends beyond textbooks and lecture halls," Caspian replied. "That the greatest lessons are learned not from data, but from daring to connect." He knew his path had diverged permanently from the one he had envisioned, and he was ready for it. "Krillos needs me," Aloan said, "to help guide them towards this new understanding, but my place is also with you. My heart is with you." She paused, her eyes sparkling with an adventurous spirit he had only glimpsed before. "What if we make a new home, Caspian? A shared home, one that embraces both our worlds?" Caspian considered her words. The universe was vast, full of possibilities. His bioengineering skills were universal. Her diplomatic talents were needed everywhere. Their unique alliance, their shared experiences, had prepared them for anything. "A new home," he echoed, a thoughtful smile spreading across his face. "A place where we can build something together, drawing from the best of both Veridia and Krillos. A place where peace is not just a treaty but a way of life." He tightened his grip on her hand. "I like that. I like that very much." Aloan's gaze held his, a promise of a future woven from shared purpose and unwavering affection. "Then it is decided," she declared, her voice firm with conviction. "Our alliance, our future, together." They stepped out of the council chamber, hand in hand, into the soft glow of the Viridian twilight. The campus, once a stage for silent observation and covert operations, now felt like the first chapter of a much larger story. The quiet student and the vigilant envoy, their lives once separate, were now intertwined, their paths leading forward together into a future they would forge themselves, a testament to an unexpected, profound love that had bridged the stars.